This video is brought to you by Patreon provider Zeos. Well, you're all in for a wild ride. Sometimes wild rides can be fun, and sometimes they can just make you sick. This is going to be a little bit of both. MR4 reticle is really nice. I love everything about it. I love the center fine dot. I love the drops. They're very easy to read and very easy to hold for. I also really like the very finite milling section to the top right for ranging. It all works really well. Yes, of course, this is a first focal plane scope, which means that as you increase the magnification like you see here, the reticle will change size to maintain its proper dimensions. Pay close attention to the right part of the hemisphere as we crack 25x. It gets a little bit darker. For whatever reason, this scope is one of the hardest I've ever had to get behind at the top end of the magnification range, which is ironic because everyone that had reviewed this before said the Eyebox is very forgiving. I feel below 15x that's the case, but above it, it's not necessarily all true. Illumination on this scope is adequate for what you're getting. Most larger magnification scopes like this with have a maximum of about 25x, you're not going to get daytime bright illumination, so don't expect that. This is as good as you're going to get, and is good enough for twilight hours. Maybe a little bit earlier than that, but all things considered, it's pretty standard across the market. At least the illumination doesn't bleed out, and it's very sharp and clear. When we put the lights on, you can just see that the reticle changes tint to red as we put it to its maximum brightness, so that gives you a little bit better idea, but more on that later. As we crest 14 mils of rotation, you'll notice that two dots underneath the turret turn white. That is to signify that you are now on the second row of numbers. As good as the turret sounds, I really feel it's a little bit too hard to turn, but that's all personal preference. But now on to something truly interesting.
All right, so just to disprove myself of being crazy, take 5. And no, not the chocolate bar, the take on filming scope. So, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You see that shift? What is that about? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, look at that. It centered itself. You know what? Here's me wiggling the crap out of this, and look at that. It returns to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You see that, right? It's not my imagination. When you track it over the windage and then the elevation, it re-zeros itself. I don't know why, but it is. I bet you, I'm going to zoom out so this way you can hopefully just see where my hand is. I'm not over here on the windage. I'm here on the elevation. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It tracks the windage over like 0.1 of a mil over 1 mil of elevation. I don't get it. I don't get it. So let's go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's not my imagination, is it, folks? No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's only across 1 mil it'll bring it over. That is as consistent and as accurate as you can get for it to be a complete fucking failure. This thing's not tracking properly. I was excited to get this target here. This way I can really give a better representation of how turrets track. And I was expecting the lesser expensive scopes to be the haha, made you look. And then here's the most expensive scope I've ever got my hands on, and it doesn't track properly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're clearly off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'll zoom out again so this way you can see where my hand is, so you know I'm not playing games with you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Will clearly click off. And before any of you say, oh, well, your target isn't right, it doesn't line up properly, it lines up perfect. So you can disprove that theory right out the window. There's something clearly wrong with this particular scope, and there's something clearly wrong with this particular scope. Yes, it's a serving size of 1, but this should not be happening on a $3,200 optic, even if you threw it off of a freaking bridge. It shouldn't be the case, but it is. That's a fail.
I genuinely got frustrated at that because I thought there was something wrong with either my mount or my setup or the target. I thought everything was wrong, but what it ended up being was just the scope was doing that weird ass tracking. And I genuinely did that 5 times, and I was down there for about an hour playing around with it until I realized it's not anything on my end, it's the actual scope itself. It was still able to return to 0, but the shifts on that are just completely unacceptable. I don't know what the hell is going on internally on this thing, but this is the first time I've ever had a scope track that off. Everything else has been either really close, between 2 to 3% for a $400 Chinese-made Arkin, or it's been dead nuts perfect. This was the only thing that was way off. Anyway, so back to the scope and what we're looking through right now. Power transformer at 30 yards is just inside this scope's minimum side focus of 50 meters. So don't expect to be shooting this inside of 50 meters all too easily, even though at 50 yards, it's not too bad. Anyway, we're going to now focus our attention on the 400-yard brick building. And if you watch my unboxing, this will look fairly familiar to you. Anyway, at 5x, you have a wonderful field of view. The colors look sensational. There's a lot of resolution to this glass. And at 5x, it is very easy to get behind. More on the Eyebox later, but just know it's really, really wonderful. The magnification ring is also very nice to turn, but that little ledge that they have on the actual magnification ring is just a little bit too small. It's there, it helps, but it's just not as good as a traditional full-size throw lever. So if you're going to be getting this thing and plan on using it, a throw lever is absolutely something that I would recommend. I said it before and I'll say it again, as smooth as the parallax adjustment is on this scope, it is very, very touchy, especially at the higher magnification range. There is your illumination on full, by the way. Again, like I said, not daytime bright. Anyway, side focus. The knob is like it's on ball bearings. It is incredibly smooth, but it feels like there's nothing really connected to it. There very clearly is, but to get it just right, even here at only 400 yards, you really have to be very slow and methodical with it, because if you're off by a little bit, you lose all sharpness to the image. However, once you get it right, and you get it right, the image is sensational. There's clearly a ton of resolution to this glass. The colors are great, the brightness is great, the sharpness is great. Look at those crows. You can almost count the feathers on their back. This is the type of performance I'm expecting for a scope that costs $3,200. Absolute perfection. Unfortunately, not everything can be perfect, and I'll let you guys in on a little secret. If you check out Sniper's Hide, they just reviewed the LR little brother to this guy, which is still very expensive. I think it's like high 2000s, and they were having problems with the tracking as well. But you know what? On to something a little bit different. On the left, we have the ZP5, and on the right, we have a scope I have yet to showcase, the Gen 2 Razor HD 4.5 to 27 by 56. Both of these scopes are currently at around 20x, and I will bump them up to their maximums in just a second. I feel both of these scopes have a lot more in common than they do not in common. Both of them share really high quality looking images, resolution that is giving you more than what you might ever need, with really good colors and contrast, even though I think the Minox pulls ahead a little bit as far as the overall brightness is concerned. And here at about 800 yards, the image, once we get it right with the Minox, does look sharper, brighter, with a little bit better image. However, that's not to say that the Razor HD is that far behind it. And given the fact that the Razor HD is about half the price of the ZP5, I would say the Razor makes a really compelling argument in that regard. Well, wasn't that fun? On to 1,000 yards, and the image right away looks incredible. There's so much detail here, I don't even know where to begin. And it's superb. Anyway, let's add our 10 mils of elevation and see what we're left with. Yada, yada, yada. You know, I'll make it sound click, 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 click. Okay, there we go. Resetting it, you'll immediately notice how much darker the image got. But you'll be delighted to know that it's not the image overall, it's just the exit pupil. So if I adjust my camera's height just a little bit, you know, all things considered, it's probably about 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch. The image now brightens up to back to what it was, but remains just as sharp as it was before. This is the type of performance I was expecting out of this caliber of glass. Perfect. But unfortunately, not in every regard. But at least here, you know the glass is sensational. Just to give you an idea real quick of what it's like to get behind this thing at 5x, as you can see, it's actually pretty open. We're just going side to side. This isn't the full hot tamale. That's going to be coming soon. But at 5x, this thing is very easy to get behind. You have a lot of leeway. At 15x, things changed a little bit. It's still pretty good. And honestly, for me, I had no problems with it. Again, this being a higher magnified scope, you have to be giving up certain, how should I say, comforts. However, at 25x, like you're about to see, you need to be on your A game. You need to be so perfect behind this that if you're not in a great position, you're never going to be using this high magnification. Just giving you a heads up. As far as how this thing handles low light, I think it handles it extremely well. This is clearly after dusk. It's around 8 p.m. and there is still enough ambient light, but the scope allows a lot of that light through. Not only does it allow light through, but allows a lot of the resolution to remain intact as well. Illumination is here on full, and that's as good as it's going to get. The battery was brand new when I started filming with this, and I haven't used it all that much, probably about a couple minutes, so I'm not overly worried about battery life being a contender with the overall brightness of the reticle. But here at 400 yards, you have a reticle that's illuminated more than enough, and you have plenty of brightness and resolution to the image that you can make out targets very easily. On to my home away from home, the 50-yard line at my local range. I said earlier that the minimum focus on this thing is 50 meters, but yet here at 50 yards, we still have a more than usable image if you plan on shooting this close. So I figured, why the hell not showcase it in this video? Obviously, this was filmed several months ago. I did say in the unboxing that my brother put me to the task a couple weeks and then corrected myself, realizing, oh shoot, it's been almost a year. The reason why it's taken me so long to get to this video is just life. I had a lot of things going on, and that still hasn't changed, but I have a little bit more time to really dedicate to this channel and get these reviews out to you. That plus I made a promise to my brother that I would get this thing done ASAP for him, because after this review is done, I'm going to have to send this back to Minox and have them take a look at the tracking on this thing. Scott was already on the ball with that, and he just recently got wind that it's going to take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, which is a doozy. Oh, why does Scott have to send his ZP5 in? Well, if you're unfamiliar with Minox, there was the older one that was a black box, and the newer one, like this one, which is the white box. The black box had outdated turrets that would fail, and thus they came out with the newer ones, which are the white boxes. Oh, and keep in mind, Minox only carries a 10-year warranty on their optics, so don't be out of warranty on a $3,200 scope. Anyway, that little rant is over. I'm trying to compose all of this into the videos. This way the post video is as short as possible, because this thing's going to be ridiculously long. But anyway, there you are at 50 yards at a very finite precision target. And I beg you to need more than what this thing is capable of doing, even here at 50 yards, even though it's only supposed to be registered for 50 meters. Who the hell knows?
Minox.
And now on to the Eyebox test. Here at 5x, like I said earlier, it's really easy to get behind. You can go side to side, fore, aft. You can do whatever you want and still be able to use it properly. It's wonderful at 5x. The field of view is stellar. There's very little distortion no matter where you are. It's excellent. Bumping it up here to about 10x, and again, you have a really good image. Again, it's good to get behind. You can get pretty far away from it. You can get pretty close up to it, and you still have a more than workable image. It's unfortunately when we go a little bit higher when things just start to get really, really tight.
15x.
Now, I wouldn't mind if it was okay across the entire range, but here it's just like really good, and then it starts getting pretty dang tight. This is only 15x, and you could already see that this thing is getting quite difficult to work around.
25x.
But once we get to 25x, like you see here, it is very challenging. Now, I understand that a lot of these optics with these really big magnification ranges, even though this is only 25x on a 5x magnification scope, the exit pupil is very tight, and thus you have to be right on top of it to look through it properly. So setting this up every single time to record was a bit of a pain in the butt. Probably the most challenging scope I've had to record through since starting this channel. So that's saying something. Now onward to 100 yards. And it was an absolute frozen tundra this day. I believe it was in the single digits, and it had eventually gotten up to about 12 degrees or so. And it was just frigid beyond belief. Starting at 100 yards, we're here at 5x, bumping it immediately up to 25, and trying to get that focus just right. When we do, again, same performance that we've seen this entire video, it looks excellent. You can make out all the details on that paper target at 100 yards, and it absolutely should do that without question. So, good news, it does. Moving on to the 190-yard berm, I set my sights on a steel target, and I rapid fire shoot my 22 LR at it to see if we could notice a splash in the snow. Again, no surprise there. You can make out almost every flake of snow on impact. I know I'm over exaggerating, but it's phenomenal how sharp everything is. Punching it back to 200 yards now on paper, and you can see a combination of 223 holes on the right and 22 LR holes on the left. Not bad groupings at all, considering we're at 200 yards in very cold conditions with a 22 LR, but the wind was on our side, and N and I are frequent flyers at the 200-300 yard line with our 22 LRs. So with this scope, you can call your shots at 200 yards with a 22 LR. Now at 300, you try to figure out where we were hitting, because we couldn't tell.
There's only so much. Oh, fuck it, put on another layer. Yep. To burn it.
If you've never shot your 22 LR out that far, I highly recommend it. It is a load of fun. And with that, let's get a little ambiance before we get into my final thoughts. Oh yeah, you could also use it to look at the moon if you want, because you know if you don't have a telescope, you could just use a Minox ZP5 and all's right with the world. So there we are. I'm not going to bore you with having this video be any longer than it needs to be. I am disappointed with the scope. Now you might be saying, you always find something to nitpick about, and I do. It's who I am. But the fact that this thing doesn't track well really irks me out. This thing, as you can see, was very clearly well kept. There's no signs of damage, even where the rings clamp onto the tube. Just, yeah, a little bit of witness marks, but that's it. This thing was not struck, it was not dropped, it was not hit with anything. Yeah, it suffered recoil, big friggin' deal. But for this thing to not track as bad as it tracked, was very disconcerting. If this was a $400 optic, okay, yeah, it's 400 bucks. I understand that, you get what you pay for. But with this, that logic doesn't apply, because if you got what you paid for, this $3,200 optic should be absolutely perfect. In a lot of other ways it is. The image quality on this thing is by far the best I've ever had. The turrets are also nice, but they don't track well, so what does it matter? And the side focus is very, very, very finicky. Why do you buy this? You buy this if you want something that's fairly lightweight and supposedly the best. But I just proved to at least myself that this thing is far from it. So what does this thing really come in at? Because you say you buy it for fairly lightweightness. Yeah, 36.3 ounces is not that heavy, all things considered. I do have, well, it's not within the same price point, but very similar size and magnification range. This was 36.3. Would you look at that? The Arkin is 0.2 of an ounce lighter, and it's 400 bucks. But these are not in the same category whatsoever. What might be in the same category is this, but it's already got a mount on there. So let's take 8 ounces and subtract it from, I'm gonna say this is gonna be very heavy. Yeah, it's a 58 ounce magnitude, and say this is 50 ounces. So this thing being 50 ounces, give or take, and this thing being 36, that's a 14 ounce savings. That's a massive amount of weight. But for a lot of guys that are shooting precision, they want the extra weight. They don't mind it because it lessens recoil. This thing is fantastic, and we'll be getting to this very soon, I assure you. But we're not on the RHD, we're on this ZP5, and I gotta now deal with Minox and have this thing at least get checked out by them. Hopefully it's not going to cost us a fortune to get this thing sent out to them and then tested and then shipped back, and hopefully it's less than 3 to 6 months out, or hopefully it's no more than 3 to 6 months out, because that would be extremely frustrating. But if they pull a Steiner when I sent in the T5 XI5 to 25 and say, oh no, there's nothing wrong, then I have a scope that's for my brother that doesn't track properly, and I have a hard time accepting that. But then I'm going to have to try to sell it, if anything, and then I'm going to feel guilty for selling a scope that I know is not 100%. So there you have it. The most expensive scope I have, it's got its quirks that can be worked around. The side focus can be worked around. The Eyebox can get worked around, no problem. If this thing tracked perfectly, then yeah, it's got its minor inconveniences, I'll say, but then it would be worth the price just for the image alone. But the fact that this thing doesn't track properly kills it. But anyway, Zeos, thank you so much for giving me money to buy this for you. I really hope it works out in the end, because I feel really bad that this thing is not 1000%. Anyway, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. See you again next time. And a very huge thank you to all of my Patreon providers. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to help support the channel but don't want to join my Patreon, I completely understand. But you can still help support by using my affiliate links in the description below. Thanks again for watching.